Disclaimer: the We Are One podcast aims to shed light on the abuse experience within the Independent Fundamental Baptist Church. The stories shared are from survivors who bravely recount their personal experiences. It is important to note that unless an abuser has been convicted in a court of law, they are presumed innocent until proven guilty. The podcast does not serve as a legal judgment, but rather as a platform for survivors to share their truth.
Now let's get into today's episode. Here is your host, Olivia.
Welcome back to the We Are One podcast. I'm your host, Olivia. To continue our Bethel Files series, I am speaking with Justin, or you may know him as JP also. Hi, Justin.
Hi.
So to get kind of into the episode and kind of talk about Bethel and stuff like that, let's start from the beginning. Were you ever born and raised in the IFB, or how did you get sent there?
So I went to a Christian school, started in 8th grade, and our Christian school went from K4 all the way through high school. And transitioning from public school to Christian school was a little hard for me because I grew up in a small town, nothing to do. In 7th grade, started getting into drugs and alcohol. And my mom was devout Christian, born and raised Baptist in the South. And she kind of had gotten like lost in her ways, I guess, and wanted to get back to the church. So she found a church that friends and family were attending, and that church had a school, and that's the school I attended. So I started in 8th grade, had some problems kind of mingling with the crowd, I guess, because my graduating class, my senior year, only had 10 kids. And
Oh, wow. Very small.
so, right, very small, very cliquey, very, different. But so I started my freshman, sophomore year, got a car, was having a lot of problems in school, just not doing well, about failing, almost getting kicked out. And somebody from our church and school had gone to Bethel. The church I went to is First Baptist Church in LaSalle, Illinois. And, the pastor there was a very strict Southern Baptist preacher, and kind of no nonsense type guy. So when the other family had found Bethel and they sent their child there, they thought they ended up leaving shortly after he got out. So I didn't really get to talk to him or know much about it, but they felt like he had success there and that it helped straighten his life out. So they thought that would be an option for me if I went to Bethel. If I agreed to go, that they would not kick me out of school, and I could come back if I graduated the program. So.
And how long were you sent there?
So I was at Bethel for about 10 months. I wasn't there as long as a lot of the other guys. But an interesting fact was probably about 8 months into my stay, my mom and my cousin moved to Bethel and actually worked there. Yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That just shocked me. Your mother worked at Bethel. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm not exactly sure what all she did there. I wasn't really able to communicate with her a whole lot, but while she was there, she was kind of doing some administrative work, I believe, and kind of just getting kids into the program and working with families and things like that. She did other things where she embroidered shirts and clothing and helped with purchases and stuff like that. I think she kind of helped with the books and things. Yeah, I mean, as the story goes on, there's more to add to that, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Because toward the end, she started seeing things that she questioned, and that was like at the end. We actually moved out like in the middle of the night in like a blizzard condition up north, which we were traveling from Mississippi to Illinois. And we actually moved out in the middle of the night because Miss Fountain kind of warned us that social services were coming in the morning, and they didn't want my mom being affiliated with any kind of backlash or anything. So they actually graduated me from the program and let me leave. And
Wow.
yeah, that's kind of how I got out.
Yeah, that is insane. So let's kind of backtrack in a way. What was it like though being able to have this freedom, being able to like kind of just do as you want, basically, right? Like do what you want. You have a car, you know, you're
Yeah.
hanging out with people, you're doing drugs and alcohol from, you know, what you said.
Yeah.
Um, and then
Yeah.
you get in here, right? And it's
Yeah.
like you don't have the right to do anything besides what you're told. How was that like though? And how did you navigate that being like how old were you? Like what, six?
So I was 16.
Okay.
I was 16 when I went in. Yeah, and my mom kind of pitched it to me like, hey, you're about to fail school, you're about to get kicked out, like, your life's going in a bad direction, you should change that. And hey, let's go look at this school down in Lucedale, Mississippi, and see if it's a fit for you. If you don't like it, we can leave. And I'm like, okay, and she kind of said, you'll get to exercise every day, which was big for me. I played soccer, I ran every day. Like I was, I was young. I was a teenager, right? I wanted to be in shape, so that was appealing to me. But when we went down there, um, it was just my mom and I, and we sat down at Brother Fountain's in his house and met him. And the first thing he did was he's like, "Hi, I'm Brother Fountain," and he shook my hand. I was sitting on the couch. Well, as I'm sitting there and he's trying to shake my hand, he like jerks me up out of the couch, and he's like, "Son, we stand when we shake a man's hand here." And I was kind of like, "Oh, okay. I don't think I like this place already. Like, what's going on here?" And
Yeah.
that's when he brought brother William Knott in. He was in
Okay,
the
so
other
you
room.
were there with William Knott.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was there
Cool.
shortly after he got there. So, and I was
What
there
was
all the way through.
yeah, what was your first impression of William Knott?
Scary. He was like, I, I don't know. He's like Darth Maul, right? He's just scary, short, mean, very intimidating, very muscular.
Very aggressive and
Yeah,
very intense from all the clips and things that I read about him. I mean, even though
yeah.
he looks tiny and probably, looks like he wouldn't hurt a fly, he's very, like he's very intense and aggressive.
Well, yeah, so he actually won Golden Gloves boxing champion 2 years in a row in the Marine Corps. That's kind of where, and he grew up in Detroit, Michigan with like I
Mhm.
think he said 9 brothers and sisters, and they basically grew up in the ghetto. And his mom just kind of raised them to the best that she could. But I mean, you could kind of see what that would be like in Detroit, growing up at his age. So, uh,
Yeah, he seems very unhinged. Like I
yeah,
feel like no matter how old you are, like he's just he seems unhinged in a way,
yeah.
right? I mean, I have that video clip and I'll put it in here of him yelling at the Dateline guy and he's just
Oh
screaming
yeah.
at the McDonald's parking lot. And
Right.
Reacts to someone he does not like.
I don't want to talk to you.
Why not?
I'll tell you that because I don't like you. Get away from me.
Is this how you treat the young
This is
boys?
how I treat you. Get away from me.
Is this how you treat
Get
the
away
young boys?
from me, sir.
Court documents obtained by 2020 show that before Knott came to Alabama, he was accused in a lawsuit of what a judge called medieval torture at another Christian Boys Academy for troubled youth, this one in Mississippi.
like for to be like a godly man,
Yeah.
no.
So I don't think he was. I think if when he was saved, I think it probably happened at Bethel, because when he came in there, he was wearing basically gangster clothing, real baggy clothing. He had chains and all kinds of stuff, and there was 2 instances that I knew he was affiliated with some type of illegal activity. And I heard multiple stories of other things, but 2 that I witnessed myself. He basically had me in charge of cleaning his car and detailing it all the time was like kind of one of my jobs. And the one time when he came back from Mobile, Alabama, he had like 13 bullet holes in his car and was like in a shootout. And there was actually a bullet lodged in the door jamb of his car that I had to like clean out.
Oh my gosh, that's
Yeah.
intense. Definitely for really anyone, but definitely being a teenager and having to see that and clean that and be around this person.
Yeah.
Again, there's so many there's so many different stories out there and stuff like
Oh yeah.
that. Um, so what were some, I would say, what were some crazy things that you can think of that maybe a listener should realize about these places? Whether, because, and the thing is, even though Bethel is shut down, right, like now with like for teenagers and stuff like that. Herman
Right.
Fountain's still up and running with doing other things, right?
Yeah.
And there's so many patterns and similarities within these groups and homes and facilities, whether that's isolation rooms, starving, overeating, having to run miles and doing like military boot camp stuff. So there is a lot of similarities. So what was some things that happened though in Bethel?
So my my understanding is when they brought William Knott in, he was there to kind of maintain order and kind of take control of the barracks and kind of run it the way he seen fit. And it was kind of a known but not spoken where, Brother Fountain owned this place and he ran it and he was in charge. But at the same time, William Knott was like basically given the keys to do whatever he wants. And, behind closed doors, those can be two different things. Brother Fountain might have seen it, a strict love policy where, tough love or whatever, but the way
Child abuse. What do you say?
Who says that's child abuse? That's brainwashing of humanism. That there's nothing wrong with that switch. There's nothing wrong with spanking a kid when they need a spanking.
Photographs from the court hearing that you've seen these. A youngster from 1980. Bruises here. Are those acceptable as far as punishment is
Oh, yes, sir.
No problem with those.
No, sir.
1980. No problem with those. That looks like there may have been a little bleeding, but maybe not. Huh?
Yeah, no problem with that.
way William Knott ran it was more like a gang than a military school. So, I mean, I could go on for days about stories of things that I've seen, but some of the major ones that like Brother Fountain, he's in his house, he doesn't see these things would be like, I actually, we'd get in trouble if we didn't clean very well. And I was in charge of the laundry room. So, I had some brand new brooms and that was a big deal because with an old broom, you couldn't clean very well and it took forever. So I was hiding them and kids were like joking around trying to steal them from me. And I fell out of the attic to the laundry room and busted my shin open real bad. And, what they did is they threw me in the back of a pickup truck and drove me to the hospital. And the guys were making fun of me. Oh, when we get there, they're gonna tie you up with fish hooks and all this kind of weird stuff. But he when I got there, William Knott sat there and watched him stitch my leg back together completely the whole time. And then when I got back, he cleaned my stitches every day with bleach and a Q-tip, like 2 times a day for like 2 weeks straight, right, till my stitches came out. But kind of during that time, I was laid up in the rack and I couldn't, I couldn't do PT and all this kind of stuff. So I kind of became a little closer with DI Knott, and he actually had me sitting in his room playing video games. And he's like, "Hey, I want you to come with me." And it was like middle of the night, right? And I get in his car and we drive down to this bad part of town. And it's a big trailer court. And as we're driving in, there's a guy standing underneath the street light. And he stops Mr. Knott and he, "Hey man, what's up?" And they kind of do this handshake. And then we drive to a trailer and we park and he goes inside and he's in there for probably half hour, 45 minutes. And then he comes back out and he gets in the car and we leave and we go out the second entrance where there's another guy standing underneath a street light and make sure that he leaves. And then we go back to the barracks and he takes me in. I go sit in his room. He tells me to play video games again. I'm just sitting there and I'm listening to him. What I'm assuming was he was snorting cocaine in his bathroom. I mean, I could definitely hear him doing it. And then he came out and went straight. He called it his Smokies, was his Marine Corps uniform with his hat and everything. And when he put that on, you knew it was a bad night because that's when you're going to get worn out like all night long doing calisthenics. What he would normally do is he would turn all the hot showers on in the shower room and he'd turn the heat on. Doesn't matter if it's middle of summer or not. And then he'd wear everybody out in the barracks. And it's basically like a huge sauna. And you're carrying these huge foot lockers and things that probably weighed about 60 to 80 pounds full of clothes, and they're made out of solid plywood. But yeah, he went out and wore those guys out all night long while I sat there in the rack listening to it. And, I didn't get to see a whole lot of it, but I've witnessed it before. And they're kicking people and punching them and throwing them down staircases and all kinds of wild stuff. So that would be kind of one instance of something that Brother Fountain probably thought, okay, this guy is wearing them out because they're not listening. They're acting up. They need to be in line. But he didn't see him take a cadet off campus to a drug dealer's house to buy drugs and then come back and do them, right? Like those things he probably never knew about, but he probably had, he probably thought things, but if you keep them separated, how does Brother Fountain get in trouble for that, right? How is he held accountable
Yeah.
if he's hiding it? And so that would be one thing for parents is you really don't know what these people are doing, right? And like I said, he ran it like a gang, so his most trusted people he'd promote. And promotions were not a fun experience at all. Like when I got promoted, well, when you first go to Bethel, you go when D.I. Knott was there, you go through what's called orientation. That's basically you get the student handbook and you have to learn all the rules and everything, the slogan of the school, and you have to be able to repeat all this stuff and pass a test at the end of your orientation. But during that time, you have two guys that are assigned to you to wear you out, and basically all day long, all you're doing is like duck walks, duck crawls, 8 count bodybuilders, push-ups, sit-ups, running, just anything. And if you try to stop or you feel like your body can't physically handle it, they would tell me things like they did this one route exercise where they make you put your arms above your head and you'd get in a straight line and you'd roll like this, just over and over and over. You'd roll from one end to the other in the barracks or out in the field. And you'd do that for 3-4 hours straight to the point of like you're kind of going crazy. And I've seen kids like throwing up, right? Because they're so sick and dizzy and discombobulated that they're rolling in their own vomit and things. And if they stopped, these other guys that are in charge are kicking them in the face, in the stomach, they're kicking them in the privates. And they did this to one kid about a week before I got there, and they did it in the barracks. His name was Cadet Paulillo. And he had done it so long, they said that they did it to him for like 2 or 3 days straight, and he kind of like lost his mind and ran out of the barracks and dove headfirst into the concrete sidewalk and tried to kill himself. He actually broke his arm. When I got there, his arm was in a cast. But after his arm was broken, they continued to wear him out because they thought he was faking a broken arm. And they didn't take him to the hospital till like it started turning green. He started getting gangrene. And they finally took him. Like,
Oh my gosh. And
Hmm.
I mean, granted, Herman Fountain is very protected in Bluesdale, Mississippi, but like my thing is like when you have multiple people come in with the same person,
yeah.
why isn't there no investigation? Right?
Yeah.
Like
Right.
that's and it's so sad because like if there was, and that just shows like how the system also is not people can in the government and stuff like that can scream like protect the children, but like you're not protecting because of the way the system is also built, right? There needs
Right.
to be more stricter laws and rules and regulations for these facilities. Like
Yeah,
it
there needs to be routine and routine visits, like checking up and
absolutely
making,
like
I mean,
because like
if
my thing
both
is like
the
if you're dropping like if like you said William Knott was with you whatever and you're seeing multiple people, it's like wait, why isn't the red flags like
right,
right? And not to say that they weren't, maybe the nurse like spoke up and you know what I mean, like we'll never
right.
know. But it's just like it's so crazy to me when like when you hear that it's like where were the people like
Yeah.
hospitalized. That is insane. What are some fun memories though? I mean, I know it's kind of hard to say fun memories, but there has to probably be some good memories that came along with being there. Maybe friendships and stuff like that. What were some fun?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I made some friends while I was there. I guess the fun times that I remember, once in a while they put a movie on and we get to watch a movie. We'd have free time on like Sundays. And those were the days where you could have a slotted like 10 or 15-minute conversation with your parents. It was always monitored. There was always somebody on the other side listening to everything you said. But that and mail, when you'd get mail. Mail was the biggest thing because that would be kind of a time when you would open that on your free time and be able to reconnect with people back home. And just for that few minutes while you read that letter, you weren't at Bethel anymore, right? You were back home. And those times were great. And I actually we'd run, I don't know, he said it was like 8 miles every day. I don't know how far it was, but we were gone for like almost 3 hours in the morning running. And before we would do that, I would always wake up early before everybody, and I would actually go lay out on the fence and just look up at the stars because it was always dark. And I would just think like, man, if somebody back home was staring at those stars, like how close does that make you? And, reality and theory compared to the universe. Like, so just mentally getting away from the physical stuff that was going on there that was when it was fun for me. And the friendships too, like those definitely held their weight and really helped people through. And I've had people reach out to me, recently and express like, hey man, you were really nice to me while I was there, and I appreciate that. It helped me get through. And like blown away, didn't know that, that I had touched somebody like that and helped them. And I know there's been people that did the same for me. So uh, for kids that may be going through that or may have to go through something like that, I would really suggest just kind of helping each other.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's amazing. And you know, you never know who you can impact, right? Like I get
Yeah.
messages all the time where they're like, your platform has saved me, or your platform has made
Oh,
me
that's
feel
awesome.
alone, or hey, your platform has made me realize that these things do take place and that I'm not crazy, right? And
Right.
so it's always nice to get those things or feel that, right? That you're
Right.
doing or you've helped. So I totally can relate to you on that, Justin, in a weird way. um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but um, that was really, when you talked about like looking up at the stars and stuff like that, you know, as someone who like I've never obviously gone through that and been sent away or and stuff like that, I can't imagine the mental toll it took. No matter how old you are, I know like I know like Alan was pretty young, like the youngest
Oh
thing,
yeah.
being a child, and or whether you're a child or you're a teenager, being, taken away, whether that's from a bounty hunter, kidnapped from your
Yeah.
parents, any of it, it can do something to you mentally, right? Like
Oh, 100%.
abandonment issues and stuff like that that
Right.
can come to play. How would you say that is it has it affected your adult life?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, and I've had other trauma in my life too that's contributed, but Bethel in a way it helped me. It hurt and it helped. But I think the biggest takeaway from Bethel for me was that there was no longer limits on things that you can do. And that applied to every aspect of my life. And I don't know if it's just my personality or it's because of the things I went through, but and I think it's a little mixture of both, but it didn't matter. I'm like 100% one way or 100% the other way. There's no like in between with me. So when I was doing like back, I'm doing a lot better now, obviously, but back when I was having problems after I got out of high school and things, if I was doing good in school and I was going to church and I was 100% that way. But once I got out and I started doing the wrong things, I was 100% wrong the wrong way. And I mean, I went from graduating Christian high school to selling multiple pounds of marijuana in a week and doing 8 balls of cocaine every day. Like I went through that and it was a really bad time in my life. It almost ruined my life. And I think, I contribute a lot of that to not having boundaries. And I think Bethel kind of opened that door for me where anything's possible. You can do anything you want and you're strong enough to do it, you can do it. So I think that really affected me a lot. And just taking everything to the extreme because everything at Bethel was extreme. I've watched kids get drowned I've watched people, myself included, getting attacked by pit bulls that were trained to kill. Then watched people get electrocuted for fun. Like, I, so once I got out and I go back to my Christian high school with the graduating class of 10 people who don't watch rated R movies, it's kind of a culture shock. And, you know, I, you just kind of look at life a little differently after you know,
Yeah.
experience like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I can totally understand in the way of whether that only happened to you and it kind of shifted your adult life, or if there was more things that led up to it that you have, and you like look back and you're like, man, this happened, this happened, this happened. This is why I am who I am. So thanks for opening up about that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your mom being like, that is just, I like when you said that, I was like, what? Because this is our first time, so like this is a real honest
Oh
raw
yeah.
reaction. And when you said that, I was like, what? Like I was taken back by it, so I needed time to process that. How did that come about? Do you know?
So I'm not exactly sure, but there was communications between Brother Fountain and my mom, obviously asking how I'm doing, things like that. And I think they kind of built a relationship with Miss Fountain and everybody. And eventually it just came around like, hey, we need help down here. Would you be willing to help? And yeah, she quit her job, her and my cousin both, and they both moved down there. And you know, they there was a lot of promises made, like they were going to buy her a vehicle. My mom, I grew up in a single parent family home my whole life, so
Okay.
basically, and I mean, not the entirety, but majority. And mom always, we didn't have a lot of money, so having a place to live that she didn't have to pay for, having a vehicle given sponsored to her that she didn't have to pay for, not having to pay for a lot of food and all the like that all, it sounded good. And she's moving to the south. We're up by Chicago, and now she's moving, close to the Gulf of Mexico. So it's like, okay, this could be appealing. She's going to be close to her son. She's going to be able to. So it made sense to me why she might want to do that, and my cousin. But after she had been there for a while and she started seeing things, and then eventually Brother Fountain was asking her to look over children's injuries and wanted her to like have paperwork documentation saying that, I checked this child over, they're fine, they can go back to work, they can go back to school. And my mom was 100% like, no way, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, I don't know these things. Why would you even ask me to do this? So she started having these questions, but then at that time she's kind of trapped too, just like us, right? Where she was scared to say anything or go anywhere because of fear of backlash or what they might do. They basically are paying for everything. She doesn't have a whole lot of money yet. So, like, what's she gonna do? And she can't, it's not like she can move all of her stuff out on her own. So I think there toward the end she was, she's only there a couple months, obviously, and then we left. But yeah, she was really scared and had some questions for me afterwards, but I think a lot of it she just didn't really want to know, because when people are faced with this type of thing, you get one of two types of reactions. Either they want to know everything about it, or they don't want to know anything about it.
Yeah.
So,
And it's easier to not care if you don't know, right? Like it's
right.
easier to say, I don't
Mm.
know,
Yeah.
than
Right.
than knowing, and then it's like replaying in your head, like, okay, this happened, this happened. And
Right.
I will say this too, because there might be a listener out there that will say, oh my gosh, his mom should have done this or whatever. It is so easy to
Right.
catch judgment. But
Oh, 100%.
when you're in this high controlling environment where your house is paid for, your
Right.
car, and this is just, I mean, IFB can do this too.
Right.
There's so many people out in this world that will say, oh, I will never be vulnerable to fall in that trap. Don't
Yeah.
say never, because it's
Right.
easy to. And
Right.
definitely, and I feel like in that time frame too, like we're not talking about right now, we're talking about years, and not
Right.
having the resources compared to now, it's
Right.
different. And
Yeah,
it's
and the internet wasn't like it is
yeah,
now. You didn't have
yeah.
podcasts, you didn't have social media.
You didn't have documentaries to be like,
Right.
wait, to watch on a Sunday with your family, and you're like,
Right.
wait, I know
Right.
that,
Right.
so, and it's, again, it's easy to catch judgment, but
Yeah.
I mean, What was it like though? Did you get to see her? Did you get to interact with her
Yeah,
or
I did briefly a couple of times. One time was uh, every once in a while a child would get to go on leave once they felt that the child was, kind of following the rules and everything, and that they could trust them. They would let their parents come bring them on leave. Like I got to do it with my dad for like 4 days. We went to Gulf Shores and got to do that. So that was awesome. And then my mom wanted to take me, and they let me go to her trailer for a little while to kind of pack my clothes and get ready. Um, I actually fell asleep because I was so tired just from all the physical activity, and I think I just felt comfortable. I was sitting on the couch, and it must have been seconds, and I just fell asleep, and I end up like being late for church, I think. And yeah, I was severely worn out for that after my vacation. So I got to go on vacation thinking about that the whole entire time. Like, oh great, when I get back, it's going to be trouble. So, and it was.
yeah. What would you say to someone who, even though it's 2025, these places still exist,
Oh yeah,
right? And they're still open and they still operate, whether they're affiliated with the church or they're just a state, being sent, a kid from the state being sent to one of these facilities, what would
right.
you say to a family though that has the option to look in different options about sending their kid to a place? What are some red flags that you would say that parents need to look out for?
Boy, that's a good question. Because there's just it's so easy for them to manipulate and hide that it's really hard to see and judge. I would say do extensive research, and if the place isn't willing to be open about things where you could talk to children that go there about their experience there, then why is that? Why aren't you allowed to? And if you can't talk to those people, who can you talk to? Do you know somebody that went there that's graduated that's out? Can you get a hold of those people, or are there resources out there that know about these places? Like, just really do your homework, because and I feel for these parents, because I have a teenager of my own now. Right? They're not easy, and it's a hard time for everybody. But uh, just do your research. Try to figure out as much as you can about the place, and in my opinion, I'd pray about it, obviously, because I feel like if God doesn't give you the answer, if you don't feel it's okay, then maybe that's something you probably shouldn't be doing. So,
Yeah. I always say too, like for any family out there that is in this, I don't know what else I can do, right?
right.
Like I know for me, I was wild teenager. I'm very honest about it. And I look back and I'm like, Mom, I can never apologize for all the hell I
No,
went
yeah,
through, right? But I will say, my parents never also fell into that mindset like we have to send her away. And I am extremely thankful, even though I probably had a lot of similarities with partying and stuff like that, and sneaking out and stuff like that. But one thing I will say, my parents never, I don't want to say parents give up on their children, because because in reality they are just looking for like what else to do, right? They're like, they're
yeah,
not giving up, but they're like, they don't know what else to do. And
yeah,
I always say to families that are looking at these options, okay, the red flags I look at, like when I watch these documentaries, right? And I'm like, okay, red flag one, first like 60 seconds into the show. It's like they were not allowed to talk to their kids for 30 days. They were not
right,
allowed to do this. It's like, okay, I'm sorry, what? Or that they sign their
yeah,
rights away immediately and they're across state lines. It's like,
right. Yeah. Yeah,
well,
all those kind of things. That's kind of why I said, like, if they're not willing to be open about everything, like I would expect, if I was going to send my child somewhere, I would want to be there with her, with him, and I would want to sit down, and I would want them to show me. I would want to see everything. I want to be able to be involved in it, and
yeah.
find out, is this a safe place? And like you said, yeah, those red flags, they'll present themselves. You should
Yeah, and I feel like
maybe ignore it.
in today's world, definitely with
Yeah,
technology and stuff like that, you go on, Facebook and you see someone like calling out this business right nowadays or
yeah,
this with proof. They just didn't have that back then.
right.
And and there's a part of me that's like, man, why couldn't you, just to help, but I feel like Everything happens for a reason. I
Yeah.
believe that. And not to say that someone deserves that, absolutely not.
Right.
But
Right.
I feel like, with you and other survivors that I've talked with, they've changed their perspective on how can I help bring awareness, right?
Yeah.
How can I help someone out there? And so having these open discussions and just talking about your experience and stuff like that, who knows? There might be someone out there that got sent to Bethel or somewhere else that was like Bethel, where they're like, nobody's gonna listen to me, nobody's gonna
Yeah.
believe me. And just to make them feel less alone, that's all that matters in the
Yeah.
long run, is to make someone feel less alone and know that there is someone out there that can
Right.
relate to you in all aspects of life. Talk about, where are you at now in your life though? How did you, when you left Bethel, what kind of place?
So, yeah, I went back to the Christian high school, did really good. I graduated from there, dated some really nice girls from there, met a lot of nice families, and things went well for quite a while. Even got out, went to a Christian college. Didn't get to graduate from there, actually got kicked out for drinking. That's kind of what started everything. It was like a friend invited me back home on spring break, and he's like, "Hey, let's have
And
drinks."
spring break will get you, man.
Every time. Yeah.
Every
So
time.
that kind of killed, like, and when that happened, my mom really kind of was upset that I had regressed back into my old ways, and she kicked me out of the house, and that kind of spiraled. Everything kind of spiraled after that. And like I said, I got into drugs and alcohol really bad. And it got to a point where, I'd lost everything in my life. My credit was shot. I couldn't buy anything. And I just hit rock bottom, right? And in that moment, and I was in my early 20s, and I was like, I have to do something, right? And I actually was living in a pop-up camper in the middle of winter and up by Chicago, staying on my uncle's property, no heat, no electricity. And I got a job at a bar cooking, and then I got a job at another bar bouncing, being a bouncer. And I just made a little bit of money, and I ended up meeting a really good friend of mine that I've known since like first grade. And he was building grain bins, and they were next door to my mom's. My mom actually let me come back home after I started working and things. And at this point, I'd gotten some help, and I gotten off the drugs. I wasn't doing any drugs. I was drinking a lot, but I wasn't doing drugs anymore. And I started working with this company, and I worked my way up, and I just kind of put my head down and learned and just worked my tail off. And that's all I did for, well, even today still. But I worked building grain bins, became a foreman, ran a crew, did that for like 9 years almost. And then I became a millwright, and I did similar work for bigger co-ops and things. Did that for a year, learned how to weld. I went to school, learned about hydraulics and pneumatics. And I got a job at another place called Vector Manufacturing, and I was building hydro excavators and sewer cleaners. And I did that for 2 years. And once I kind of got all this like broad, kind of knowledge of all
Yeah.
this stuff, I got a job in the power industry.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, so I worked at a power plant up by Chicago for almost 4 years, and a company had bought them out, and I kind of seen some writing on the wall. So my wife and I were looking for uh, somewhere south. We were sick of the winter, and this place, I had a feeling they were going to let me go because I was newer and it was new ownership.
Yeah.
Well, they had posted a job for a remote operations center in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I applied for it and I got it. So we moved down here, and
Nice.
yeah, I was operating power plants all over the United States, all the way from the border of Mexico all the way up to the border of Canada and New York, from a remote location here in Charlotte, and did that for almost 6 years. And some things happened, so the company was kind of going a different direction. So now I'm learning a new trade where I'm learning how to test high voltage power equipment in switch yards, and I travel for work. So um, that's what I'm doing now. It's been a blessing. God's really, He's watched out for me. I can say that. So I'm blessed to be here. My family, I have a beautiful family, and yeah, things come a long way. I'll say that. But as long as you can put your head down, look past the stuff that irritates you, I know that's not easy to do. but just know that there's better days ahead if you can put that work in.
Absolutely. Well, Justin, it's been such a great time speaking with you. And I'm so happy to know that, even though you hit rock bottom, like you said, and you felt like you lost it all, in the long run, you found it all. You have a beautiful
Yeah.
family, you have a great career, full of knowledge of, I mean, like that's impressive. Most people stay
Thanks.
in their little comfortable, like I'm
Yeah.
not going to venture out. Um, and that you rose above it all, right? And you're
Yeah.
living the life, even if you're not rich, you're rich in
Yeah.
life because you have a beautiful
Right.
family and you overcome a lot. And so I appreciate you coming on today's
Yeah.
episode and kind of just sharing about Bethel and your experience, and your opinions on the facilities that are up and running and just some things
Yeah.
as a parent's view. And so, yeah, I really
I,
appreciate it.
I think if I could add one more thing real quick,
Yes.
I think just for people out there, for me, for so long, um, it was I guess I fell in this trap of making all these bad decisions, right? And blaming them on everything, which yeah, a lot of that has like will affect you and does play a role in the decisions you make. But at the same time, what I was doing to myself was I never forgave myself for the decisions I made. And that bothered me for a long time. And it wasn't till too long ago that a family member kind of had reached out to me and we were talking, and he's like, it's okay to have bad days. It's okay to make mistakes. So, if you're in that position where, oh no, I slipped up and maybe you do drugs and you did drugs, or maybe you're an alcoholic and you're drinking again, it's okay. Don't beat yourself up to the point where you can't get out of that hole, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, just take it for what it is. It was a mistake. Okay, move on and just try to do better. And I tell you if I had listened to that a long time ago, I probably would have been 10 times higher in a position than where I am now, but I think that really held me back. So don't let that stuff hold you back. That's my point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's so important to add on, because at the end of the day, we're all human, we're all going to make
Right.
mistakes. Nobody's perfect. It's all
Absolutely.
about taking accountability, moving on, and doing better for ourselves, our future. And for like me, I struggled a lot on in the way of forgiving myself for things that I did in my past,
Yeah.
right? And there was, sorry, there was a time that I was taking pictures in a field, and it's so random, but and I just thought to myself, like, I forgive me. Like, I forgive
Mhm.
myself. And it was so random. It was like the most random thing, but I was looking out in the field and I was looking at God's creation. And I know that's like so cliche to say, but I really was. And there was just a moment where I was like, you know what? I have forgiven myself and it's time to forgive and move on, right? With
Yeah.
myself, with
Hard.
what I've done, with the mistakes, the things I did as a teenager. Those don't, my mom's always said this, your past does not define you, it refines you. And you
Oh,
got
I
to
see.
refine for your future. And that's what I did. And it seems like, and it sounds like you did too. And that's
Yeah.
amazing. And I love that. And I love hearing that. And if someone's out there right now and they're going through something, right? And they're not at the point where you and I are, right?
Right.
They're still like in that funk. They're in that hole, right? Just
Yeah.
know that you can get out of it. It's not, it could take days, it could take years, but at the
Yeah.
end of the day, your progress, I always say baby steps are huge.
Yeah.
And
And
just
and,
it,
and
it,
reach
it,
out, find
yeah.
somebody that you can talk to that you trust. Like,
Mhm.
find that one person. And that was it for me, is like when I was doing drugs and really bad into things, I found one guy that ran a counseling group out of his mom's basement. And it was so weird, but just seeing those people and being around them, I only went for like 2 months. And that was all I needed. Like, it
Yeah.
just like a switch, it just clicked. And I was like, man, I'm getting out of this thing right now. I'm doing it right
Yeah.
now. And I didn't look
Yeah.
back. And yeah, it's like you said, it's not simple, and maybe you don't have that answer yet, but keep looking, right? Keep trying. Don't give up on yourself. 100%. There's people out there.
Absolutely. And definitely when you talk about a certain situation or something, it really is freeing.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so my biggest prayer is that whoever stumbles upon, my platform, that they feel heard, seen, loved, and just know that, you know, whether you believe in God or not, if you have left
Yeah.
the faith or whatever, just know that at the end of the day, that the God that you believed, you know, thinking that he hates you and that you have to earn his love, it's far from the truth. And
Oh yeah.
God loves you and you are wonderfully, you know, beautiful made and all the things. And so at the end of the day, I just want my platform so then someone can feel less alone, right? It goes
Right.
back to what we said, feeling less
Feeling
alone.
your worth.
Find the person. It takes one person to change your
Oh
whole
yeah.
life,
Yeah.
whether that's a therapist, a friend,
Right.
cousin, an aunt, anyone.
Yeah.
And you know, my challenge to anyone out there is if someone is willing to talk, hear them. You don't need to
Oh
talk.
yeah.
Just
Yeah.
hear them. Hear them. Have
100%.
an open heart, open mind. It will change everything.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I've ran into people that's like I tried to talk to and then you could just tell like the tension starts and then it's like they don't ask questions, they don't listen,
Yeah.
they change the subject and it's like that's even more hurtful because it's like, man, I'm trying and nobody cares, right? But
Yeah.
don't give up on that because not everybody's like that, I promise.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much again,
Yeah,
Justin, for
thanks,
being
Olivia.
on today's episode. And you know, look forward to the next episode where I
Sure.
speak with another Bethel survivor, and just talk more about Bethel and Herman and William Knott and all the things that come with Bethel. So
Yeah,
thank you so much.
absolutely. Thank you.